Hey, everybody, welcome back to our next episode of LA Sessions. And I want to welcome back our co host Melody as well. Welcome, Melody.
Thank you, Brian.
And, just to get right into it, today's topic, we are going to be talking about sex work because I think it's been in the news in the last decade, really. I mean, just because it's evolved. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it has different faces now. I think back in the day, people associated it with prostitution, like streetwalkers, just things like that, or sometimes backdoor stuff, like people go to a strip club, pay the extra, or whatever, and some of these strip clubs will have like a hotel attached to it, which was always a little weird. I literally grew up in a city where there was such a place, but nowadays it's like it's got certain gray areas, I would call it, like OnlyFans, um massage parlors. I think those have been around for a while, but I don't know, I feel like they've been in the news more. Escorts have always kind of been a gray area as well. And so I want to ask Melody, in your opinion, do you think sex work should be criminalized?
In my personal opinion, no, I don't. I think that there is a lot of value to it, especially for the individuals who are actually partaking in it. Like you said, there's been this giant push nowadays where there are things like OnlyFans, escort services, those happy ending massage parlors. I believe that without having it criminalized, there can be greater pushes to creating safety in these areas, whether it's, medical testing for STDs, STIs, things like that, practicing safe sex practices, being able to, like I said, really just be safe with it. I think if we criminalize it, it's still going to happen. It's still going to happen. I mean, if we look way back when like, it wasn't quite as big as it is now or quite as known and quite as accepted, it was still happening.
Right.
It's going to happen regardless. Having it criminalized, like I said, it's just going to make it unsafe for the people who are actually partaking in the services and the people who are putting forth the services.
I always remember sex work being labeled as sort of a victimless crime. Do you believe that?
No, I don't believe that it's a victimless crime. Because there's a lot of situations in which the people who are brought into sex work are individuals who have been traumatized or who are addicted to certain substances, and then this is the only way that they can get by. So in that sense, it's the re-traumatization of these individuals and decreasing their self-esteem so that they don't think that they can really do anything else. Therefore, it is definitely not victimless.
Yeah.
However, there are those individuals who go into it for other reasons. And it's not because of trauma, it's not because of drugs, it's not because of alcohol, it's not because of anything like that. It's just because they're making ends meet. The increase of people on social media being like, hey, I'm selling feet pics just to make my rent. In that sense, I suppose it can be considered victimless.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you bring up a good point because I used to work in foster care a lot, and one of the fears that the state would have, mental health workers would have for their clients, and not just female clients, would be that they get indoctrinated into this sex work field, where, in my experience, what would happen was that the 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 field has changed, and people who like basically the pimps, the people who find these young people, they kind of reverse the mental health thinking, and they make the young people feel like they're in charge. Like, no, the pimp is just there to keep you safe. Or in some cases, the girls will refer to the pimps as their boyfriend, but they're like, no, I make all this money. It's all about me. But the reality is, the men behind the scenes kind of control that, because those young girls will find out real quick. Like, if they got out of line, they would find out real fast that they weren't in charge. It's just when they start seeing more money than they've ever seen before, and you add that to the fact that, I mean, name me one grown adult now that grew up in foster care that doesn't have some sort of trauma, right? I mean, it's to degrees, but there's some sort of abandonment there, and then they find this way of making money that is way more money than minimum wage, and it's hard to say no. But it's like you say, the criminalization part. It's like it's so hard to address in some ways because you don't want to criminalize the victims of it, but you also have to address the fact that some people are targeting these people because they're vulnerable. And in that sense, you're targeting them to bring them into this field that technically is criminal, but you don't want to criminalize them. It's not a perfect situation, but like you said, there's, I don't want to say positives, but kind of, sort of, and we can get into it later, with like the people that seek out sex workers. But I agree with you that it's one of those things where I look at it, it's like marijuana, right? I mean, it's like this inside joke, and where like people were made out to be criminals by lawmakers who in all likelihood were smoking pot like all the time. And so it's like, it's kind of weird. Then once they decriminalized it because they thought they could make tax dollars off of it, then it became different. And in this situation, I'm not saying you should make tax dollars off of sex work, although some parts of Nevada I think they do. But
Yes, they do.
yeah, oddly enough, not Las Vegas, not Sin City itself, but that's kind of funny though. You got to go to the outskirts to get that kind of thing legally. Yeah. But yeah, no. So I think we're in agreement about that. I mean, and plus adding that stigma to these young people who, again, already felt enough trauma, but now there's the trauma of being called like a criminal, being called like just having a record and all that, especially like the examples we're talking about, like if you were brought in at age 13 or something like that. That's already harsh enough, Now we'll move on to, like, we're talking about the gray area stuff. Like, what are your opinions on the gray area sex work professions? Like OnlyFans is probably the biggest one that comes to mind because it's relatively new. I know there's like other offshoots, but OnlyFans is like the one that really gets the spotlight. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, honestly, my thoughts kind of fall into what I was saying before. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it personally. I think, it is a way for people to make money, right? And it kind of falls into the same it does fall into the same category. It's just gray areas of sex work. And so a lot of the times in, like, I'll say in OnlyFans and pornography specifically, like, the people who are partaking in it are watching it. They're looking at it. They're not engaging in the physical act. Whereas things like escort services, happy ending massage parlors, that is direct engagement in the act. So I believe that those two things are kind of separate. If you want to kind of subcategorize it and you want to talk about, like, okay, OnlyFans, pornography, people are watching it, people are partaking in it. That definitely isn't, it's not as stigmatized as other sex works. Yeah. I mean, if you watch social media, people are out there like, yeah, go get your bread, girl, go do it. And it's like, okay, and I've even noticed an increase in couples who are like, oh yeah, my wife is on OnlyFans and it brings in so much money.
Yeah. I've got strong opinions for that. As you know, I specialize more in men's mental health, but I just that's an interesting topic in and of itself that could probably be broached on a later topic. But no, I think you're definitely right about that, because there's a layer between the OnlyFans model and the customer in this situation, because it's a very hands off. Whatever the customer wants to do with their hands, whether they're watching OnlyFans, is their business, but their hands aren't on the entrepreneur in this sense. But yeah, that's interesting, because it's like it's no different than porn, because it's mostly watching in that sense. Somebody's making money off of it, and it's just another way of selling your looks. And sometimes, there are things that you get paid to do. I know, like, you can pay them to, and that's set between the Instagram, or sorry, the OnlyFans model and the individual, like, I'll pay you this much to do some demeaning act or whatever, or I don't know, maybe they don't think it's demeaning, but whatever. But I do have some fears that it could lead to it's like when you hate your job, but then you get a better job that pays more and you feel more appreciated. But I think in the more traditional sense, that's like, like, this company treats me like crap. They give me crazy hours, but this other company is willing to give me days off. I get better mental health benefits and all that. I think I'm gonna go there. Yeah, well, in this case, I don't like making minimum wage in my unskilled labor job. But if I show some skin and guys are willing to pay me insane amounts of money to show even more skin, and then okay, and then I get to work whatever hours I want, which really isn't that much. You just upload pictures and all that, but you engage maybe, which most of the time it's not even them engaging with their the I was gonna say Johns, but I guess that wouldn't be the right term. But yes, like I said, there's a layer between. Now, you gave the example of like escorts, happy ending massages. Now that's a little bit different because that's very involved, and there's direct to customer care, so to speak, right there. It's like, what are your thoughts on that, where there is no layer in between, unless you count a condom?
I mean, in some cases, is that even necessarily there?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, this is what I was talking about earlier, where there definitely needs to be safety precautions. And across all different subcategories, like I was saying, there needs to be safety precautions. However, here, I think that there definitely needs to be added layers of safety precaution, because you are direct face-to-face with the client and you don't know how safe they've been with their past partners. You don't know what this looks like, right? It's not like people go into escort services and they go, here is my latest medical test, I am safe.
Yeah, they don't exactly do the equivalent of FBI background check on sexual partner history.
Yeah.
You don't do a live scan on that.
Mm-mm. Then on the other side of it, right, you don't know what kind of mental state that person might be in and what kind of physical harm could come, right? Because like you said, they don't do a live scan, they don't do a background check. So I guess my overall thing is I'm not against
some guys might be into that.
That's exactly where I was gonna go with it. Some people are into that. Like, for some people, that is the thing, that degradation, that, I don't want to say violence, but that form of pain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If we want to use the term, some people would call it sadomasochism, maybe they're within the BDSM community and that's their kink, right? And I would hope that people aren't just out there going to sex workers being like, hey, I'm part of the BDSM community, and not actually being part of it and knowing the safe practices that go into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would hope. However, there are some people that do that, and that is very, very concerning for the safety of these individuals.
Yeah. So, see, I'm of two minds about this, because I guess I feel like I have to make a distinction, because I'm sure escorts around the world would want me to do this, where, like, I don't think they want to be considered prostitutes, because sometimes they really are just hired to be like arm candy for, like, sometimes traveling businessmen or whatever, and there's no sex involved unless the escort wants to. In that sense, it's up to her to determine that. And so I want to make that distinction. So it's not literally always sex. And then with happy ending massages, for example. So I guess I'm going to reference it in terms of the workers who just do the happy endings. They don't actually, like, go into the full on, like, sex act and everything like that. So I guess I'm of two minds, because I'm like, there's sometimes, like, men, let's say, like, they're single men, okay? And they're just not good with women, but they pay whatever the fee is. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say $100 to go get the shittiest massage they've ever gotten, but it ends with a little extra something, okay? But they leave with a smile on their face, right? Whereas they go on dating apps, reject, reject, reject. Because listen, I got I got to give it up to persistent men out there that go on these dating apps, because objectively, come on, if you're a man who's not like at least an 8 in all categories, you're not going to get a lot of responses. Whereas if you're a woman who is a 6 objectively, no, you'll get inquiries from guys who are 8s, 9s, and 10s, guys who are into the 6 figures. They look good, they're in shape, they're charismatic, go getters. It's just that I don't look down on guys who are going to dating apps. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I don't look down on it, because this is Melly, this is just the times we live in. Technology is a big thing, and that is way more efficient than the old ways of hoping you're going to meet some beautiful girl at a bookstore or a coffee shop or anything like that. So I get it, but it is a painful world for some men who haven't quite gotten to where they want to get in life yet. And if a guy, the only thing keeping him from falling into a deep depression or worse is going to a happy ending massage a couple times a month, you know what? I can't look down on that, and I don't want to criminalize it. Because I don't think not being a stud, I don't think being a dud is a crime. And I certainly don't think a man should take his life one day because he feels no affection from women. And so that's where I'm at with that. But at the same time, the optimistic side of me hopes that by doing that, he'll get more confidence, and then maybe he'll take better care of himself, and then want a genuine relationship. Not to say he didn't want it before, but now he's more driven, I guess, to go after it instead of paying someone for like temporary affection, And so, yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. And because some of these, because speaking of technology, a lot of other men now, maybe they don't go to happy ending massages, but they'll do like AI sex chatbots, or they'll get those dolls from like Japan, which I watch a Rogan podcast, and that stuff's getting way more advanced. Let me tell you, I was like, damn, if you're a guy who can't get women in real life, but you got a few $1,000s, I could see why some men would get one of these dolls. It never calls you a loser. It never says no. It doesn't nag you. So that's just, I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
I 100% agree with you on that. When we're talking about, the people who actually partake in the services, for a lot of people, it can be the only way that they get that physical affection, whether it's because of being turned down, low self-esteem, low motivation. And that's great. It's a great, I don't want to say it's a great way of doing it. It's better than the alternative that you're talking about.
Yep.
Having them get into that pit of despair and social isolation, and eventually possibly taking their own life. We definitely don't want to see that. And if this is going to be the way that they are going to get that physical affection and feel that connection, then it's important to be able to do that. Ideally, yes, we would be able to do that with a partner, but you're right. That's not always realistic.
It is hard. It is really, really hard. And I want to definitely shine a light on just the plight of the modern male that just doesn't have those qualities that modern women want. I have a term for people like that. I call them jags. It's just another guy. It's not that they're bad. They're just not extraordinary. They don't have any standout qualities. It's not to say they can't get them. They're just not there yet, right? Maybe they suffered some kind of hardship and they just fell into a pit and they're climbing out. But in the meantime, that's the worst you could call about them, is they're a jag, right? But then I can see why they have that motivation to seek out sex work. Now I gave an example of maybe an optimistic side where maybe that's where they can go, but I would be remiss if I didn't also cover where it could go in a negative way, and that is maybe they're just like, okay, getting a hand job is really, really cool, but it's lost its luster now. I want the whole thing. I want the full experience. And maybe some of these massage workers will be like, okay, but you got to pay extra, or maybe they won't, and then the guy feels rejection again. Because his attitude now is like, dude, I can't even pay you to have sex with me. But then he's gonna find alternative avenues to do it. I mean, let's be real. It doesn't take that much effort. If you go to Vegas, you sit on the casino floor and they will find you. So um, there's that. But then there's other problems that can arise, like you mentioned earlier. You don't know. I mean, like, I mean, there's always extreme cases we hear about, right, where a man wakes up in a ice-filled tub, missing a kidney or something like that,
No. Mhm.
or he finds his stuff. He's been relieved of all of his belongings in the middle of the night because maybe he got drugged or something like that. He might feel like, I can't get women unless I pay them. See, and
Mhm.
then and that might feel good temporarily, but in the end, that's worse for
Yeah.
his psyche, worse for his sense of self worth, right? And certainly he has no sense of accomplishment with it.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you agree, but yeah, those are my thoughts.
100%. I 100% agree. It can do a lot more damage to our self-esteem, our self-confidence, our self-love to then be rejected by the person that we are paying.
You know, something I know we've been talking a lot about men that seek this out, but it's so interesting because I have seen so few incidents or even just representation of women seeking out any sort of sex work. They're usually portrayed as the ones um, that are providing the service, not the ones seeking out the service. Have you thought? Can you think of any times or examples that you've seen that where it's the reverse?
Well, in like books and movies and in talking to people, yeah, there have definitely been situations where it's been the reverse. Maybe a woman's going to a family dinner or something, and they're like, "Oh crap, I don't have somebody to bring with me. My family is going to just like blow up on me and maybe put me on dating apps, and I don't want to do that." And then they seek out male escort services to bring people along. On the other side, like there are definitely women that are looking at OnlyFans and things like that. I think the reason that that's not talked about more often is because I don't. Have you heard of book talk, Brian? Have you
No,
heard of this trend?
no. What is that?
Okay, so to educate you and any of the listeners or viewers, book talk is essentially where people go to talk about different trends that are happening in like smutty books. So back in like our parents' day and our grandparents' day, there was an author called Laverne Spencer, and she wrote girly books, which definitely portrayed a lot of sexual scenes in them, for research purposes, you know. And then there's been an increase in that as people in my generation have gotten older. Like this has become a big thing. So what book talk does is it's like women and men coming through and being like, "Hey, I read this thing in this book. I'm going to show you how to do it." So
Interesting. I mean, I mean, no, it's kind of funny to me, not for the reasons you might think, but only because I have a couple of book projects that I am working on that I hope to author in the next couple of years. One would be more academic. The other is more, and it's kind of a spin-off of just a lot of the stuff I do in men's, therapy, men's psychology and all that. But like, it actually does typically contain explicit content, not for children. And just because I hate seeing movies where they avoid the sex talk and sex all at a period, where because maybe they got to keep a PG rating, but I'm just like thinking to myself, come on, stop it. People have sex. That's what they do. They don't go through relationships that you never see anything. It's good if you're making maybe a Hallmark TV special for Christmas where, yeah, you're appealing to a Christian audience. But no, we have to be real. We have to be honest about that because a lot of young men today, I think, get really nervous about that kind of thing and they don't know what to do. And so we have to normalize the fact that no, this kind of thing does happen. And so that's just my thing. But like, No, I didn't know about about this group or anything like that. Interesting. Huh.
Look it up.
Because it's
But so to continue that thought
yeah.
is that yes, women definitely do seek these things out. It's just not as out there because things like book talk are more out there, and that is definitely, especially today, seen as more appropriate and socially acceptable.
Yeah. See, that's so funny because I think literally the only time I've ever even seen in media the idea of women seeking out like a gigolo, well, other than that Rob Schneider movie Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo, which is an underrated classic, was there was a movie I think I watched it on Hulu or Amazon Prime, like God, like long time ago. I can't. God, I know I'm gonna get that. I know I'm gonna get it wrong. I think it was called "Let's Talk About Sex," or maybe it was like "Casual Sex" or something like that. Um, and it was just like it was a really funny movie, but it was just like two construction workers that they can't get women because they're always broke. And so they're like, man, let's just go to an airport bar, like lounge, and just dress up in the one suit that we own. And we'll just try to pick up women there because maybe we'll get some woman that's like a traveler and she just wants a quick thing. And they're like, okay. But then meanwhile, two successful women friends I can't remember if they had breakups or what, but they decide, you know what, let's just be crazy. We've been kind of responsible our whole lives. Let's just go hire two gigolos. And they're like, I know they hang out at airport hotel or airport bars. Let's go. And so they pick up these two guys and thinking they were gigolos, but they're not. So it's like this kind of funny thing. But that was like literally the only time I can think of that where I was like, it was shown in a way that was, it showed women really seeking it out, like in a serious way. And because and these weren't women that were losers or anything like that, they were very successful. They were just like couldn't find men on their level, I guess. And so they found these two dudes, and yeah. But whereas, my God, if you're looking for like media representations of men trying to get women, I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, I remember there was this really, really horrible made for TV movie on Fox back in the late 90s. I think it was called L.A. Johns. That was the whole premise, is like this call girl who just, goes out with these men, has relations with them, and it's just kind of glamorizing it a bit. And I was like, wow. But that was a 90s Fox for you. It's very, very kind of edgy. But yeah, it was, I was like, wow, okay. So yeah, that's so interesting. I wonder, for our listeners, if you can think of any other examples of women seeking out sex work, please put it in the comments below. I would love to read up on that because I have so few people talking about it.
There was one, I don't know if you watch any of these shows, Family Guy.
Yeah,
Family
of
Guy,
course.
American Dad, things like that. Both of them have depicted women seeking out men as for sex work.
See,
So,
that's
those are
funny.
two more mainstream.
Every time I think of Family Guy and I think of anything like that, it would be like Quagmire, just being a total man whore. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but surprisingly, it's not him.
Ah, okay. Wow. Well,
So.
it can't be Peter. I don't want to judge, but so
for some women, he might be the type.
he might be their type. You gotta have strong bed springs and everything. But yeah. So actually, we talked about kind of like the type of people that would seek out sex work, but it has to be asked: what would influence a person to become a sex worker? What do you think are some emotional, mental, social influences that would put someone in that path?
I mean, we kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, but to expand upon it, I definitely think, there are a lot of individuals who have been in the foster care system or who have gone through the adoption process or maybe bounced around homes,
Yeah.
or maybe individuals who just had really difficult childhoods within their family, like people who probably should have gone into the foster care system or been adopted, but they weren't taken away by social services for whatever reason, right? Because a lot of the times, if we want to go on the darker end of it, a lot of the times you see individuals who are traumatized, and those individuals who are essentially kind of like governing them or trying to keep them safe, those pimps, they know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
when we talk about individuals who are like the criminalized area of this, it would definitely be those pimps, because like I said, they know what they're looking for. They know the signs of a person who is just in that hole or who has been through that trauma.
Yeah.
And who needs some kind of way out. And that's a really big vulnerability.
Yeah.
So there's that. Go ahead.
No, I agree. And I would add to that where it has to be asked, well, where did that vulnerability come from? And I put this on a lot of dads, a lot of absentee dads out there who think it's funny to just, have all these kids with different moms, but not be responsible to any of them, like it's some kind of joke. And then you typically do find out that male individual also has maybe issues with attachment, and maybe he was abandoned. But somewhere along the way, someone's got to break that cycle. Someone's got to break that cycle. And there was a movie that came out in the '90s that showed that point really, really well. It wasn't with prostitution or anything but it was with South Central, where character OG Bobby Johnson didn't really have a dad. He became an absentee dad because he went to prison, but then he saw the cycle of violence and all that, and he tried to do something about it. And I think men have to really, really step up to the plate and be dads and know that you're gonna mess up. But it's like, well, it's like you walk out on your children, then it increases the chances that they're gonna get into some criminal act. But if you stay in their life, no, the chances are much, much better. And like I said, you're gonna mess up, but you're gonna learn. You're gonna try. And at the end of the day, I think most people in their most private moments who maybe had abandonment issues would rather say, I'd rather have a parent that was like imperfect, but was really trying, but was present in my life, than just they walked out the door for cigarettes and never came back. Right? I definitely don't like that certain men, I think Terry Crews, it's hard to believe people would find negative things to say about him. He's such a cool dude, but I think he made some comments about that, like challenging men to be better. And then he got pushback. And I'm just like, it's not, but I think there's a shift though. People are starting to tolerate less of that sort of like, let's just make excuses for people. No, I think people are victims in life. Yes. But I always say it's extraordinary people that come out and can make a whole lot with very little. And I think that's all he's asking for. Right. And I think that's a brilliant point. And I hope it resonates with some people. Because like I said, I just feel like sometimes, like, again, I've seen this in like foster care, group cares, where some of these kids, they're 16, 17, but like they just kind of joke and laugh about how many kids they've got. And I mean, possibly some of that's because they don't have responsibility yet. Like, they don't have a job, they don't have any of that, so it's kind of a joke. And maybe they think like, oh, well, being a dad's not that hard. It's like, no, it's really hard, actually. And so, you do all that, well, then there's less chance that your daughter, gets on the pole. But like, if you run out on them, I mean, it can be really, really bad, And I would like to challenge men to do better. And a lot of that is by going to therapy, getting natural supports, learning skills, right? Learning how to parent. I mean, and let me just applaud all the parents out there that preemptively go to parenting classes before they even have the kid, right? Just to learn and just keep an open mind. I know people who do that, and that is freaking great. And you know what? They tend to be really good parents. And they know they're going to mess up from time to time. But they also know, like, oh, I have the knowledge I had before the kid even was born. And so I got to give credit to people who do that. And that's really awesome. But yeah.
I 100% agree. I would say family dynamics in general, because I've seen situations, or I've heard about situations, literally seen them, because as you know, I did go through the foster care system for a period of time. And I did see people who came out of there, and yes, I will start like this. Their dad was actually the person who was the most consistent in their life. And even though their dad was the most consistent, for one reason or another, they couldn't be a family. And so then coming out of the foster care system, even though their dad was the person who was most consistent, they still ended up going out there and, to use like a term, turning tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever kind of tricks it is that they were doing, they still ended up doing it.
Yeah.
Regardless of that relationship. And I've also seen in full family dynamics where sometimes the middle child ended up being the person to go out and do that. And we know middle child syndrome, typically the most overlooked kid in the families. So it can happen, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the other end of it. Maybe it's not that there's just a vulnerability or, that there's some kind of trauma, but it can even just be like, I want to feel a sense of power. I want to feel a sense of connection. I want to feel appreciated and seen and
Bingo.
something.
Yeah. 100% agree. I often talk about how important control is to a person's life, because some people, and I make this observation, for example, because I spent a lot of years working with the homeless population, and talk about a population that has almost no control in their life. There's a reason why sometimes, and look, I'm not trying to minimize the workers that have to work with the homeless population, but when you see homeless individuals make a big deal out of something as simple as like being able to have contraband, or they're like a lot of shelters, for example. I mean, this is through no fault of their own. It is what it is, but there's a limit how much you can bring in to the place, because there's only so much storage. So they can't always bring in everything they have that fits in a shopping cart, and they make a big deal out of that. And they're like, forget it, I'm not going to stay here then. Well, that shopping cart contains all of their belongings, and it's the only control they have in their life. See?
Yep.
And so there's no wonder they fight so hard for it. So yeah, I see how that's important to a vulnerable population. But then also, if you're someone who's super, super young, and we live in an age now where, I mean, you just got to take social media for what it is, but you got certain people who are very young, they're flaunting their wealth, and I feel like social media, like, they anoint certain young people to be like the next big thing. There was like that Cash Me Outside girl that was on Dr. Phil. There was that guy, I can't remember his name, but it's almost better that I don't say his name because I don't want to give him fans. That young kid that like just crashed his McLaren, but he's known for doing pranks and stuff like that. But he's a millionaire though. And like there's that Hawktua girl, and I made a whole impromptu video with my friend Willie, who's into the finance world, on that little meme coin scam that she just pulled, and she's like 22, right? And so people see this idea of like, why is she famous? I am just as funny. I'm just as good looking. I should be like that. So they want that, and they find out she's worth millions now, and then it makes them want to get some of that fame. But when they realize they can't do it the same way some of these other YouTube, Instagram, TikTokers did it, they're going to find a way to do it. And it's going to give them maybe the only control they have in their life. And unfortunately, some of that control is like this, it's like it's a Trojan horse. It's not always a gift. Sometimes it could be the thing that screws you up. Like you gave the example earlier of like female OnlyFans model who's like, my boyfriend or my husband is totally okay with this, and sometimes they are, right? I mean, sometimes you got to ask, well, who's holding the camera for some of these? It's usually the husband or the boyfriend, right? But I would ask sometimes, like, if that's actually built to last, because at some point, a lot of men that who are particular high value and worth, they're going to be like, I don't feel that special anymore. At some point, the novelty wears off, and you're going to be thinking like, well, like, everyone's seen my wife naked now. It's like, damn, right? And then there's another part of the community that like makes fun of men who are like cucks, essentially. And so they're going to feel a certain way. Or let's say it's a woman who completely branded herself on her own, made her own OnlyFans, makes a lot of money doing that. And maybe she even had a really, really good corporate job and realized, F it, this is more for me. That's fine. Well, I hope she's given some thought to the fact that that's not going to make her as appealing to men that are of equal to or higher status than her. It might make her appealing to like a lot of men who are like the ones we said, who maybe go to the the massage parlors to get a little, stimulation in their life. But if her goal was just to get money and she's like, I don't need no man ever, okay, yeah, great. Go chase that money. Absolutely. But if her goal was one day to be like, I want to settle down with a good guy. No, you left the world of good guys. They ain't gonna be in your life. They're gonna be going after someone who is a little more exclusive to them, right? And sometimes these women, they learn too late. Like some of these Instagram models and some of these OnlyFans models, let's just be fair. They're like running backs in the NFL. They have like a good 10-year window. Because running backs, once you turn 30, no one's going to sign you except for the minimum salary because and that's assuming you're even healthy. Okay. If you're a model, but like on OnlyFans and whatnot, let's just be real about one thing. If you got started early, you're in your 20s, you've got a pretty good 10-year window. Don't you think that you're going to be competing with a 25-year-old version of you at some point that more men are going to go after? And then, unfortunately, what do these women feel they got to do then? It's, well, I got to give the consumer more. So I got to do things that maybe I was morally opposed to before. And so it could escalate, see, because she going to go back to her corporate job after a 10-year layoff? Probably not going to happen, right? And then, on the flip side of it, let's say it was a girl that worked at Burger King or McDonald's or something. She ain't going back to that. You got to go back to making like 20 an hour when guys were paying you like 20 in tips. No, not going to happen. And so I could see it being this thing that women don't think about long term. They love the initial dopamine hit. There's like, everybody wants me. Oh my God. I went from having like maybe 100 followers on my social media to now I got like 100,000 and they all pay cash. That's hard to walk away from. But when you're close to the end and you realize, damn, these men don't actually want me, and the ones that do want me are the ones that I don't want. I'm not attracted to them. That could cause more mental health damage in the end than they were ever ready for.
Something that I was considering, because we talked about OnlyFans and things like that. You mentioned Instagram.
Yeah.
Instagram, Twitch streamers, all kinds of different platforms. It's not just OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Even these things that we're using just to connect with other people, any kind of social media.
Yeah.
You're going to find this stuff on there. You're going to find people who are getting paid to be influencers in that fashion.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's degrees to this. Like you mentioned, like Twitch streamers. It's like, hey, you could play video games as long as your thumbs hold up, right? But the court of public opinion is not going to find you guilty. I think times have changed, and let's just say, for the sake of argument, you meet a girl, you're a Twitch streamer, you meet a girl, and she takes you home to meet mom and dad for the first time. Yeah, they might laugh and scoff at you being a video gamer, but when you show them that, well, I make 6 figures just playing video games because I'm really good at it, or I compete like professionally as well. Yeah, mom and dad will shut the fuck up real fast, right? When that's like, oh, okay, well, damn, okay, because there's a level of marketing that goes into being a Twitch streamer and all that. I'm not going to poo-poo on that. Listen, when I was a child, you told me that people can make money playing video games, I would have called you crazy, right? But people can do it. But Instagram, yeah, I mean, I think if we had to draw a parallel between that and OnlyFans, it's based on looks and all that. And I mean, you take any profession back in the day where your looks were, that was your moneymaker. It becomes easier on Instagram. Like, you don't have to be a professional runway model anymore, where you got to be a tall, skinny, statuesque. You can be like voluptuous and short, and actually probably make just as much money as some of these runway models, if not more, actually. Or like, you don't have to be a professional athlete. You just got to look really, really in shape and have charisma, have a really good photographer. You can make money. See, that's why it's funny, because one sport I used to love, and I trained in it when I was younger, was bodybuilding. The top bodybuilders today aren't as good as they were before. And I'm not saying that's an insult. They're in great shape. They're just that some of them aren't as genetically gifted as the ones in the past. It's just that the ones who are more genetically gifted, for example, now they're like, I'm not going to go through the heartache and effort of being a pro. That's hard. I'm going to go straight to Instagram. Now, they're never going to look and as be dialed in as the professionals, but they're good enough for social media, right? And they'll make money without ever having to be a professional, without ever having to go through all of the rigors of the dieting, the cutting weight and all that, the cutting water. That's hard stuff. The posing without cramping up. No, they're just like, no, I'm just gonna hawk a supplement line. I'm gonna do all this stuff. I'm gonna engage with clients through my social media, and that's business savvy. That's really good. But I also don't need to look as good as the pros. But I'll make more money than them now. You see, and so you're not getting the best doing stuff necessarily. Not if they could go on social media and do it. Not if they go on Instagram, TikTok, and all that. And yeah, it's like, yeah, that's how I see it. And I mean, let's just be real. If you're a woman now in her 40s, let's say, but you fit the demographic of the individuals you spoke of earlier, where maybe they have abandonment issues, they had unstable housing growing up, and the only control they could get was to basically walk the streets and sleep with men for money, okay? And let's say they did that until they were like 30 or whatever, but let's be real. That time in between that stretch of time, a 14-year stretch of time, there's probably some abuse. They probably had some bad dealings with these Johns and all that they wish never happened. But then now they go on their computer and they're just like, wait, what the hell is this OnlyFans shit? And they're like, these girls can go up there and take off their clothes but not sleep with anybody, and they're getting paid more money than I ever made, ever. They're gonna wish, oh my God, I wish I had that growing up. You know, they're going to be like, oh, good Lord, I went through all that trauma, and these girls these days have it that lucky. You know, I mean, that's going to be rough, man, for any woman to see.
Different layers, though, because if you think about it, and I've heard many cases of this, I know a lot of people who have started OnlyFans, and I've heard a lot of crazy stories. Stalking. The amount of stalking that occurs from these online platforms nowadays. It's insane. It is wild. I can't tell you the amount of people that I've talked to that have even just been like, people from my corporate job now stalk me.
Wow.
Their bosses stalk them. Their bosses pay them so much money for these exclusive photos of them through these platforms. And then the implications that has on them in the workplace.
Jeez.
And I'm not saying just like online stalking. I'm saying, no, they have come to their house and stared in their windows and took pictures of them and sent like threatening letters and all kinds of things like that.
Wow. Yeah, something to consider. It's like, there's no free lunch, huh? There's always going to be something. Wow. That is, that can be scary, especially when you consider, you can have all the protections you want online, but the reality is, there's always going to be someone that is so computer and tech savvy they can find out stuff about you. That's. I mean, sometimes you see how like something happens, like maybe some viral video where some criminal act is performed, and maybe it's like some guy beats up an old person or something, and then like they'll post it on social media, and they'll be like, "Come on, internet, do your thing." Within a day, that person's been totally doxxed, right? Because they find them, the internet comes together to do it. Now, that's an example of where, you feel all good about yourself, but you're right. Wow, it could be, but when it's done to stalk and victimize someone, that's the dark side of it. Yeah. Wow. And I mean, stalking and all that kind of thing has been around since forever. I mean, I remember, was it when I was a kid, was that with Kevin Costner, Whitney Houston, The Bodyguard? That was creepy as hell. Where the guy is on the phone stalking her, and it wasn't even the actual bad guy. But yeah, but no, I mean, it's true. And I gotta ask them, given everything we've been talking about, Melody, where do you see this whole field of sex work going, and where do you see it ending up? Like, let's say 10 years from now.
I think the height of online sex work is going to decrease. Honestly,
Really?
I don't foresee this being a long-term thing. Because yes, it does certain things. However, there is a certain sense of actual physical connection and things like that that isn't seen in this online social media gray area, right? As you can see, there's already been a lot of people kind of dropping off in areas like this. Like, it is growing for some people, but in other areas on other platforms, it is dropping. And so my hope is that there will be less stigma around it going forward, that there will be less criminalization of the individuals who are actually part of the act, who, may have gone through traumas and things like that. I'm hoping that there will be more mental health benefits provided to those individuals so that they can overcome whatever traumas and things like that they have gone through, so that they don't feel like this is a need.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
I'm not as optimistic as you.
That's okay.
I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a drop off, but in the same way there was a drop off with, for example, with certain technologies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the .com bubble, it was high, then the bubble burst, right? Then went down. I see this coming back, but in a different form than what we're talking about. I look at it as the future of sex work is going to coincide with, like Mark Zuckerberg's initial talk about the metaverse, because this is in keeping with the bubble I talk about. Like for example, like 2001, the online bubble crash, boom, went down, but then went back up. The metaverse, which was hugely touted during the pandemic, nobody talks about it anymore because it was a little too ambitious and it underdelivered. But then what does technology usually do? Then it goes down and whoop, goes back up, but usually not in the form that you thought it would be. Because the great thing about these immersive experiences, like with gaming, with just virtual reality, augmented reality, and all that, it is all good, except it only stimulates your certain senses, just sight and sound, right? There's no touch involved. Now,
Yeah.
I know for a fact there are some tech companies that work on haptic feedback, and for people who don't know what that is, that's like imagine like your phone, every time you tap like a number, it has that little feedback. If you didn't do that, you'd be like, wait, did it actually register when I'm texting? It's that haptic feedback that lets you know, yes, I hit a button and the phone registered it. Well, there's companies working on the whole, like, stimulating your whole body. Like it's in that movie. It's like in that movie Ready Player One, with like those little suits like that. I actually can foresee now. I can see this happening in the next 10 years because technology moves so freaking fast. But I could actually see the low tech version of a lot of what I'm talking about being like the high tech thing right now, which is, like I said, those advanced like sex dolls from like Japan and all that. I could see that actually being the new plasma screen TV, where nobody buys those anymore. You can't even get them because they got replaced by better, thinner models. But at the time, people were like, "Oh my god, I gotta get a plasma TV," until they realized it overheats my house. The screen burns in. But newer LCD screens were better. The OLED TVs were better. The new version of the metaverse, I think, is going to be better in terms of technology. People are going to embrace it more, but people are going to eventually program it to do unforeseen things. Let's just say, but it's all going to be grounded in like legitimate like practices. Like, let's say, those people who develop like shooting games like Call of Duty and all that, they probably want to make we'll make it so that, like, in the game, if you're playing, you're all immersed in, you get shot in the shoulder, it's going to do a little buzz on your shoulder, and players will probably be like, wow, that's so cool, that's so advanced. But you don't think someone's going to be like, wait a minute, can we make it stimulate other parts? You see, they're just using technology that's already there for different, just a different rollout, if you will. And I could see that happening. And we've talked about, like, you and I in our prior podcast about modern dating, the numbers aren't good. the numbers aren't good. Like the number of single men, single women. Um, and again, if it's now, they say the example of I gave of like just a jag that goes to a happy ending massage parlor twice a month, and each time, let's say he pays $100, and I have to hope that he's tipping too. But like let's just say that, so it's like 200 something a month. But let's say the subscription fees or whatever to some kind of future sex work app is considerably less, and he never has to leave his home. I mean, what's the other than the subscription investment? What, like box of Kleenexes? What's he really need to get? You see, that's my point. And I know we talked offline about the ease of accessibility that technology brings, right? And if people feel I can get stimulation from the comfort of my own home now, and I don't even need to go to a massage parlor, because it's the same logic as I'd rather go to a massage parlor because it's easier than going and meeting women and getting rejected. It's just going to escalate, and then soon it's just going to be, again, that's assuming that the technology advances to that point, which I think it will. That's my bleak outlook. However, that's not going to change for men who are on their purpose, who are chasing greatness and don't otherwise have this problem. They're not going to be affected by any of that. In fact, they're probably going to like crack jokes about that kind of thing, if we're being honest. But it's those people that are under that minimum line, that the men who don't get messages on dating apps, who get rejected in real life. They're the ones that I think I would worry about. And again, it could make them happier so that they don't take a permanent solution to a temporary problem. That's me being optimistic, but like I said earlier, the pessimistic side is, man, they just might never leave the house at that point. So I don't know.
You make a lot of good points, and the other thing that I was thinking about is, where do we stop calling it sex work?
Yeah.
Because there's a possibility with the technology that you're talking about that it is up and coming, yeah. Right?
No pun intended.
No pun intended, thank you. But eventually, I mean, you and I also talked about AI prior to starting recording.
Yeah.
When is this just going to flip to AI?
Mm-hmm.
It's already happened in a lot of areas, like AI chatbots. I think you mentioned this earlier in our recording.
Yep.
That's a thing. And the more that's going to become prominent, pair that with all of the technology that's coming up and, the simulated sensations, it might not even be a real person on the other end of it. And so That's my question of, when do we stop considering it sex work?
Yeah. You're right, because that technology is not coming; it's already here.
Yeah.
There are already those different chatbots that are programmed to talk a certain way and everything like that, to be very feminine, very demure, whatever. So it's already here. The only thing that, again, pardon the pun, but the only thing missing is the hardware, but that's. I don't think it's that isn't already here. It's that it hasn't been distributed yet. I have to imagine there's a lot of technology over the years that's just been mothballed at a lot of different companies, because they're just like, well, how do we apply it? We have the tech, but how do we roll it out? In what way? And let's be clear about one thing. I am a staunch capitalist. I'm very anti-communism and all that. However, I do know that there are certain practices, I don't know if I would call them predatory, but like modern capitalism and just the art of making money has to capitalize on a need, a need that society, or at least a segment of the population, requires. And if we continue to see these numbers dwindle of men not being in relationships, they're just single, they're very unhappy, but then there's a rollout of or there's a potential rollout of a particular piece of tech that can make these guys happy, make them productive, and they'll pay for it. I mean, why not? I mean, our field of mental health, I mean, we've benefited from technology. I mean, telehealth became a big thing, whereas it used to be one of those things where people were like, I would never do that. I want to see my therapist in person. Now, my experience has been I operate an office, but like I'll have a client come in a couple of times and they love the location, but then the novelty wears off, right? They're like they're like, well, they're like, it's cool that I can stay here and like Brian validates my parking and the restaurants in the area are really cool, but you know what? I don't like driving here anymore. It was cool, but now I'll just meet over telehealth, and that's perfectly okay. Um, but yeah, I could see then the telehealth being like the piece of technology that I use now. But once again, it could be a guy who's like, man, you know what? I love my Japanese made sex bot, my sex doll, but you know what I hate doing is cleaning this thing. Oh, let's not even get into that because I have to imagine. My God, man, that has to be brutal. But like then now you're just like, well, there's a you just put on a haptic feedback suit now and all that, and you just throw that in the washer and dryer when you're done. It's like that's not that hard, right?
Yeah.
People are gonna be like, I'll do that, right? And if they argue, yeah, but I can't touch and all that. Well, no, if you have that haptic feedback, it's going to simulate it really well. And let's just be fair. I don't want to compare it. It's not a perfect comparison, but you know, the days of people like, for example, collecting DVDs, Blu-rays, cassette tapes, those are gone. Nobody wants clutter in their house. They want like there's a move towards minimalism. I mean, do you really like? Let's be real. If you got a sex doll, like a 5 foot something sex doll, man, like you've just taken up your entire closet, like storing that thing now, right? Whereas you know, future metaverse related sort of tech, no, not really. It's not that hard. What, like a haptic feedback suit? Look, if you've ever stored a onesie, you could probably store a haptic feedback suit. You know what I mean? And so that's my thoughts on it. And like I say, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's wrong. It's just the future. But meanwhile, I would say at least half the population is going to be completely unaffected by any of this. I mean, they're not going to. No, it's not going to matter. But it just depends how disenchanted certain people get with dating and just with feeling accepted, you know. And I know we touched on it in the modern dating episode about just expectations in general. Yeah, you know, it's hard. It's hard to meet expectations as a woman and as a man of what you believe the other side wants out of you. And when you have a certain tech or you have OnlyFans and you have a massage worker that never judges you, hey, that's one less thing you got to worry about, right?
Optimistically, I believe that even if those things come to fruition and people still engage in them, at some point they're going to miss the human contact. They're going to miss the actual emotional elements of interpersonal interactions.
Yeah. No, I've no doubt they're going to miss it. They're just not going to miss the rejection. And I guess for me, sometimes I think of like the worst case scenario, and I think of like the scenario of like a person who's severely depressed, and maybe they're so broken down that they fear any kind of interaction because they fear that judgment, right? Now, granted, that's an extreme, and you're right. I think a lot of these people who would otherwise seek this kind of like isolated like experience, like where yeah they just sit in front of a computer and or their phone and they pay OnlyFans models. I have no doubt that like let's say that technology disappeared for like a year. Yeah, I'm sure they would crave some human contact. Like anything would be better than just sitting alone with your thoughts at that point. But my only thing is these companies know that, and you know, once their viewership goes down, they're gonna throw a little something, a little bit. It's like that's why buy one get one free exists. So when we need more customers, that's what we do, right? They're gonna throw some sweetener out there because they don't want to lose market share and all that. I mean, and that has nothing to do with the field. That's just America. That's just capitalism, right? That someone's got to make money. Do you want to be like the successful business, or do you want to be like Blockbuster Video, right? So that's how I look at it.
Everything goes the way of Blockbuster Video eventually.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, there's still that one store up in Oregon somewhere, but that's about it. But yeah. So anyway, Melody, do you have any parting thoughts on just today's topic in general?
No, I don't think so. I think that we really hit everything. My last bit about everything goes the way of Blockbuster Video eventually kind of falls into it.
Yeah. No, I just want to definitely let our listeners know, and just anyone who's ever participated in sex work, whether as a consumer or as the the giver, I suppose. Look, we're not judging you, and we definitely want you to feel supported in whatever way that looks like. And if you're someone who did it because you had to survive, let's say, man, I hope there's supports in place to help you in other areas of your life. And I hope if you're someone who felt like they had to pay for services to feel validated and to feel alive, I hope you have, again, supports and opportunities in your life. Maybe they're not there now, but I hope they become present and that you can utilize those so that you feel more complete. I'm not like, I would never shame someone for like continuing to go to, like, let's say a happy ending massage parlor, but they at least find other things to do. It's like, okay, it's like, all right, that's fine. But hopefully they're able to find another identity that they can also take pride in. But if they don't, you know what? I don't want them to feel like shit either. But there has to be some kind of line that you don't cross, though, like hurting the workers, maybe because you want to take it a step further or something like that. That's not good. Or being demeaning to them. I think that's definitely not good. But yeah, I want for people to have lots of positive identities they can gravitate towards, so that they're never just identifying themselves by like one really negative one. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, come on, parents, let's really step it up, okay? I mean, let's try to make it so that our kids don't feel like they're lacking in a particular crucial area like this, like they don't feel accepted and that they don't have the tools, and that they'll just go to something that maybe they thought was empowering at the time because they had no other empowerment in their lives, but then it turns out to hurt them. Empower your kids. Put them in sports. Put them in academia. Have them put them into dancing. I don't know. But or just, spend time with them. Throw the football around. Go on family picnics. For dads out there, who gives a shit? Have tea time with your daughter, right? I mean, do something. Play video games with your kids, right? Like, I'll say this right now, shit. People, like, parents might think, like, oh, well, my kids don't want to play video games with me. Man, I remember some of the funnest times was when my brother and I were playing Duck Hunt, and my dad says, let me try that. And he gets the zapper, he starts playing, and we're like, oh, man, like, Dad, you're pretty good. That was really fun. Maybe parents think that, like, no, kids wouldn't want me. I'm not hip like that. No. Usually we're like, we get a good laugh out of it, especially if your parents suck at it, but that's the fun of it sometimes. And then the dad gets to say, you know what, man, show me how to do this. You're so smart. Show dad how to play. Just do something like that. Or if you work on cars, have your kid come and help you wrench on the car, right? Yeah. Just do that. There is a connection. There is a connection with, like, young boys doing other criminal acts and not having productive time with their parents and all that. Just like there's problems with girls who go into, like, sex work, right? And they don't have positive parents or positive role models. And so I would challenge people, just do better. And if you don't know how, do what I said earlier. Go to be like those people I respect so much that go to parenting classes before the kid's born. Take that positive first step. Not everything has to be reactionary, right? Sometimes you do it just because you want to prevent something bad, or you just want to learn in general. You just want to be a better human. It's like, let's try that.
To piggyback off of the things that you're saying is where you started out. Everybody has needs. Everybody has needs and they have different ways of meeting them, and there is no shame in that.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that really we want to put into play here is safety. Be safe. Be safe for yourself. Be safe for the workers. Workers, be safe for yourself and be safe for your consumers.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to parenting, you know, even if you don't go into those parenting classes, just showing up, asking open-ended questions, asking your kid, what did you learn in school today? Instead of how was school today? Really engage in asking them things that are going to stimulate conversation. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't get into those parenting classes, that in and of itself is going to go a long way.
Yeah.
Have family dinners. Don't just let everybody sit around on their devices on their own. Actually sit down and have conversation. Even if you're tired, we're all tired at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about how tired we are.
Right.
Don't just veg out and brain rot.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let your kids do that either. Show that interest in them, that interest in what they're doing. Video games, tea parties, cars, art, dance, music, whatever it is. Show that interest. At the very least, just show up.
Mm-hmm. Because you never know, that validation for something they're passionate about could have been the variable that keeps your daughter off the pole, keeps your son from getting a gun and committing a crime, right? Because if they don't feel validated, listen, they're going to seek that validation somewhere. And if you're a young girl that your dad never told you that you were good at anything, but suddenly some pimp tells you how beautiful you are, how, you know, funny you are, how witty you are, you know what? If that's the only validation you've really gotten from a male figure, shoot, there's a strong likelihood you're gonna be drawn to it because you're gonna see something that's been missing in your life, and that's unfortunate.
I'll even extend it to partners. Show up in your partners' lives. Don't cause more trauma. Don't just look for the people who are vulnerable and engage in increased re-traumatization, because that'll lead down those paths too. Yeah. No, absolutely. All right, Melody, as always a pleasure to have you on and offering your insights. And just as a reminder to people, Melody and I are both licensed marriage and family therapists in California. And you have questions for us, you have comments about today's episode, please leave them for us. We will definitely get back to you. Or if you have topics you would like us to cover in a future session, we'll definitely do so. Or if there's even topics within what we talked about and you want us to expand on it, because we're really just limited to an hour, drop them below and we will try our best to accommodate. All righty. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you next time.